Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nicerius. I'm gonna get this video started. So today I want to bring you a video breaking down my pirate hunting Corvette build. Now this is just what I use. Not claim this is optimal or meta or even necessarily all that good. This is what I use. Also want to mention, if you want to see some actual gameplay footage of this build in action, there'll be a video linked in the comment and in the description of just me like hunting in a resource site for like half an hour or so, right? Now, getting into it, this is going to be a mostly laser-focused build, or pretty much completely laser-focused build, because again, this is intended to just sit in a resource site and hunt pirates for like an hour or two. And so let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start off with the hard points. Let's get into the hard points. So, like I mentioned before, this is a laser-focused build, but we do have a couple of utility slots down here, and you see we've got one multi-cannon for corrosive shell, and then a pulse laser for emissive munitions. Now, getting to our actual DPS weapons, you can see here we've got 4 burst lasers and 1 beam laser. We'll get into why we have a beam laser in a minute, but let's talk about it. So obviously I've got these 4 burst lasers here. So the reason I chose burst lasers is essentially just because beam lasers are draining too much energy. I just burned through my energy too quickly, so I ended up settling for burst lasers. Burst lasers end up feeling pretty good, giving me a good balance of DPS and sustainability, and not drawing my power too quickly. Now, all of these are engineered with efficient. They're all grade 5 efficient. I've got one scramble spectrum, and the rest are just oversized because I didn't know what else to really put on them. I might change that at some point, but you can put whatever experimental you want. But if you want to run this, you really are going to need the efficient engineering. If you want to get by without using efficient engineering, you can swap out these burst lasers for some pulse lasers instead. You'll obviously do less DPS, but you'll have much better power draw. Now, the reason I have this one beam laser is because, well, it's on the other underside of the ship, right? All the other weapons are either on the side or on top of the ship. And so most of the time you're going to be facing, targeting enemies with the upper side of the ship facing them, right? So this beam laser doesn't actually get to its fire as much as you think it would. And that's why I'm running a beam laser here, because when it does fire, I want to do as much DPS as it can, right? And also notice these are all gimballed weapons. These two are turreted, but all our main weapons are gimballed in this build. And that's just personal taste, really. If you're comfortable with running fixed weapons, I personally don't like running fixed weapons on this build because, like I said, this build is meant to last in a resource site for a very long time. And I just found that using fixed weapons gets a little too tedious, right? We're just looking to have a chill time and hunt pirates. Beam laser, fixed weapons get to be a little bit overkill, and that's why we're using gimbal. Now, getting to these 2 utility weapons, I mentioned them before, but we have a multi-cannon with corrosive shell and a pulse laser with emissive munitions. Now, this pulse laser with emissive is really, really nice. Sometimes pirates like to pop heat sinks. They drop off your radar at their lock, and it can be really annoying, right? You don't have to worry about this with emissive munitions, and obviously for the multi-cannon, more damage, right? More damage. What else is there to say? More damage. Now, you might be worried about the ammo draw on this. It does consume ammo, but and that's why I have high capacity mag. It has quite a bit of ammo, and honestly, just generating or just making more ammo for this is pretty cheap. It just costs some really basic like G1 raw materials, and it's not that bad. I'm personally fine with it, but if you're not, you can switch this out. It isn't mandatory. Basic pirate hunting isn't very difficult, and you really don't need corrosive shell. If you don't want it, you can switch this out for, pretty much just whatever you want. Maybe like a pulse laser, like scramble spectrum or something, and then you can have like maybe another oversized pulse. You could do what you want, but this is what I run with. Now, and we've gone through all the hard points. Let's go ahead and talk about our utility mounts next. So for our utility mounts, obviously, got a bunch of shield boosters. Now for my shield booster, I'll get into the rest of this here in a minute, but let's talk about the shield booster first, right? So I only run 1 resistance augmented shield booster. This is a personal preference. Honestly, you can run 2, but for the rest of your shield boosters, you want to run heavy duty super cap. Now for regular pirate hunting, if you don't want to engineer these, honestly, you really don't have to. It's not necessary. It's kind of overkill, to be honest. But it will make things more comfortable for you, and you can, take on a little bit more aggressive measures, which I'll get into in just a moment. Now, Obviously, just got one heat sink launcher here. This is just for if I absolutely need it. I somehow just really overheat myself. Just in case we really need it. But I do run 2-point defense, and we'll get into why there's a point defense. So this point defense is mainly just for like missiles and stuff and like anything like that. Now, but this point defense is for hatch breaker limpets, because something I like to do is I run some cargo space on my ship, and sometimes I like to just store some stuff in there to basically just attract pirates. You know, I'll just go into like a hazardous site with, you know, like 50,000 credits of cargo, and pirates will just come after you constantly. It's a great way to be just a little bit lazier in your pirate hunting. It is a little bit more dangerous. If you're going to do that, I will recommend that you have engineered shield boosters. Otherwise, you can just replace this with another shield booster. Again, that's really just personal preference and up to you how you want to play. But that's pretty much all there really is to talk about in terms of the utility mounts. Let's go and get into the core internals. So let's get into the core internals now. So obviously, military grade composite. I've actually just realized for the first time as I'm recording this video, I forgot to engineer this. This should be heavy duty with deep plating, obviously grade 5, but clearly not necessary. Honestly, you're not going to get your shield broken very often while pirate hunting, but it will be nice to have extra bulk when you do. Now, for our power plant, obviously, we've got a grade 8A, and I'm running an overcharged power plant with thermal spread. So I kind of found honestly, you can probably change this out for low emissions probably. I've got this overcharged because I used to just basically to be able to run different builds, right? Have flexibility. Sometimes I like to slap some plasma accelerators on this thing, and I need the extra power draw. But you can change this out for a different one. Armored would work just fine. You can maybe even get away with low emissions if you're really worried about heat, but it isn't really that big of a deal. So you can maybe swap this out for whatever you want, really. But I do run overcharged and thermal spread. Now, obviously, for our thrusters, dirty drive with drag drives, pretty standard, nothing out of usual here. Wrenchers, obviously. Honestly, if you're like me and you take your carrier around to where you're hunting, you don't even need to engineer this if you don't want. Just a little bit of lightweight engineering on the life support, and then for the power to this, we're running pretty standard charge enhanced with super conduits. You know, pretty standard stuff. Nothing too special. I do run grade 5 long range sensors, just because I like to be able to, you know, scan pirates from really far away. That's honestly up to you. You don't really need that. But the big thing is, you're really going to need this charge enhanced super conduits. Especially with a laser focused build like this, you drain energy so quickly. This is pretty much mandatory, to be honest. You can maybe get away with only like G3, but especially if you don't switch down the pulse lasers, not having this is going to hurt a lot. And honestly, the rest of it, other than obviously dirty drive tuning with drag drives for the thrusters, everything else pretty much up to you. Again, for the military composite, I forgot to engineer mine, but heavy duty with deep plating. And I guess that's pretty much all there is to talk about with the more internals. So let's go to get into the optional internals. Now let's get into the optionals. So first things first, we've got this bi-weave, you know, class 7 bi-weave shield generator. I run thermal resistant with fast charge. I just like to have my shields regenerate quickly as possible. I just find this works better for long-term, you know, combat, just staying in like a resource site for again like an hour or two. You can switch this out for like a prismatic or just a standard shield if you really want, but honestly, I just find that bi-weaves work way better long term. And obviously with bi-weave, you want to go with thermal resistant generally, and I like fast charge for that, just that little bit of extra charge space, right? Now, I mentioned earlier that I like to run a little cargo space on my build, and that's actually because I like to run one, collector limpets, but also sometimes some extra cargo in my hold just to attract pirates. Now, the collector limpet is a thing where, you know, I just like to collect materials from pirates I kill. I just find it really enjoyable. It just feels how to put it, satisfying, almost like in like a role-playing way. So this is really personal preference. If you don't want this, wrap this, you know, just run something else. Very much up to you. And honestly, this is pretty pretty free form. Now, I do run a fighter bay. I like to have a fighter with me, just to, you know, maybe distract one ship in a wing, and you know, just have a little extra DPS, and sometimes just to switch into the fighter and have some fun with them myself. And then honestly, that's the main reason. Sometimes I just like to swap out and use the fighter for a while. I do run one cargo rack for the hold stuff. I do have a fuel scoop. Honestly, this is pretty much like leftover when I didn't used to have a carrier. Honestly, probably going to switch this out. But then I pretty much just fill up the rest of my slots with full reinforcements. These are all heavy duty deep plating, pretty standard stuff. Do have some module reinforcements just in case. And then I've got an auto dock and a super cruise, so I can be really lazy. But this is really just up to you. You can swap these out and just simply run more hull reinforcements, or you can run like a guardian shield reinforcement if you want, something like that. But for pirate hunting, I find all that's pretty overkill. Honestly, you don't really need that much it's extra survivability. One thing that is nice is having a FSD booster in here. If you're, you know, jumping between systems and when you're hunting, can be really nice. Again, totally up to you, totally unnecessary. Obviously, pretty much the only thing mandatory here is going to be the shield generator and some hull reinforcements, right? Everything else is completely up to you. But there you go. That's what I like to run. And for my vehicles, for my ships, I like to so this is what I normally have the pilot use. You want, there's an extra point defense, like I mentioned. I like to have some cargo with me. So hashbreaker limpets are a problem, or can be a problem. And having the fighter flying around with a point defense going off can be really nice. Now this one is mostly for myself. The plasma repeaters, I really like the plasma repeater fighter. It's a ton of fun. This is mostly just for myself, and I have fun with it, right? I mostly just have my pilot use this. And that's pretty much all there is to talk about. Again, a reminder, if you want to see some gameplay footage of the build, it'll be linked in the comments and the description below. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one. So take it easy and have a good one, everybody.